Hey, thanks for joining me today. This project was born of the idea of taking this dress with the skirt and bodice and these raglan sleeves. Create a whole new garment. Drafting a pattern based on clothes you already own is pretty straightforward. You just need to make sure you fold your seams together and keep everything as flat as possible. As an adult woman, patterning for my own clothing is a little more complicated because my clothes account for the curvatures of my bust and bottom with a little extra fabric. My children are still young enough that the fronts and backs of their garments are mostly the same, which means all I need to pay attention to is the cut difference around like the neck and the shoulders. My daughter loves dresses and had asked me to make her a new dress for her birthday. I had made her a dress a couple years before that had a traditional bodice with a double layered circle skirt and a 3/4 length sleeve out of soft 100% cotton, which she loved. She'd spin her heart out in that dress and she asked if I'd make her another one like that, so naturally that brings us here. Something I really appreciate about my kids is that they are touched by my homemade efforts, imperfect as they are. The fabric I'm using is fabric I already had in my stash for years. I didn't buy anything new for this project. I love the patterning, the drape, and the soft feel of this fabric, but it was very slippery and difficult to work with. This fabric has some translucency to it, so I cut double of everything, matching the patterns. Around the neckline, I connected the bodice's pieces to their sleeves, and once I had 2 of them, I serged the necklines together with right sides facing. I wish I had not done this, but instead serged each edge and then sewed them together. I'm not a pro with the serger, and I find if I'm not paying close enough attention, I accidentally widen things like necklines when I serge. You'll see here now that she's tried on the bodice that the neckline is deeper than it should be. Also, I took for granted that one of her shirts and one of her dresses would work well together. They did well enough, but the shirt is actually a size 8 and the dress is actually a size 7. When you look at her in the bodice, you can see that although I made a mistake with the neckline, there's enough extra sleeve fabric that I can cut back the top of the sleeve at the neckline to make it function more regularly. So I decided I would try French seams on this dress where I could. What I mean by that is just sewing the seam together, wrong sides together, at the edge of the seam allowance. And then turning inside out to where the fabric is right sides together, and then sewing again where you want the seam to hit the garment. This traps the raw edges inside of the seam, which denies the garment the opportunity to fray and makes the seam more comfortable on your skin. Where I felt I couldn't do that, I used my serger. I finished the hem on the sleeve by flipping it over twice and sewing it down. I didn't film it, but I did finish off the hem of the skirt in the same way. Here the skirt is just slightly wider than the bodice. So I just did 2 long straight stitches at the top of the skirt, and then I was able to pull on those threads and gather the fabric across them, making the opening at the top of the skirt slightly smaller and also making it match the bodice, and then I was able to sew those together. And then I serged the skirt to the bodice. If I've done a good job making sense here, you'll see that I need a zipper, but that I also have 2 layers of fabric at the bodice and 2 layers of fabric at the skirt that I have to deal with. What I decided to do was to identify the center back where I wanted the zipper to go. Then I folded that in half and drew a line with a Sharpie. This is a total novice move. I should have used anything other than a Sharpie, but that's what I had. Once I had that line where I wanted it, I did a tiny zigzag stitch on either side of that line. I tried to make only enough space between the 2 zigzags that I could fit my scissors through without clipping the stitches. Once it was cut, I folded over the zigzag one time and ironed that down, and then I hugged it up to the zip of an invisible zipper and stitched that down with the top stitch down both sides. Now, every year, this girl gets to go on a daddy-daughter date for a new birthday dress on her birthday. She knew this was coming, and she came home with a special new dress, but she still decided to wear my dress the next day to school, which, made me feel like a winner.